What's up, fellow enthusiasts? Welcome to another whiskey review. My name is Andrew. Today we're reviewing the Balvenie 15-year-old sherry cask. This is whiskey drawn from a single cask, or if you're more into American whiskey, you've probably heard the term a single barrel. That means that this is the product of a single barrel, not a vatting of multiple barrels to make a batch, but a single barrel. Because of that, it means that no two whiskeys, unless they are drawn from the same barrel, will be exactly identical. We'll get into that in a bit. Notice I use the term very purposefully, fellow enthusiast. I said that because that's what I am. Like you, I am a fellow whiskey enthusiast. I am one of you. And what that means to me is that I enjoy drinking whiskey. I drink whiskey because it's fun. But more than just being enthusiastic about drinking whiskey, I'm enthusiastic about exploring whiskey, about enjoying all that there is to be enjoyed about this whiskey. I'm enthusiastic not only about the spirit in the glass, but about the distillery that it came from. I'm enthusiastic not only about the way that the whiskey was distilled, but also the way that it was aged and the casks that it were aged in. I'm enthusiastic not only about the chemical compounds that form this whiskey, but also about how those chemical compounds cause me to experience certain flavors when I smell it and taste it. All of those things are fascinating to me, and that is what it means to me to be a whiskey enthusiast. I love to drink whiskey. I love to have a good time with friends. I also like to really explore. And so when I do these videos, a lot of times I really explore this whiskey with you. I get in deep and I really try and think about what I'm drinking, and I think about what I'm tasting, and I really try to separate flavors. Do you need to do that to enjoy whiskey? Absolutely not. Am I special because I find these 6 or 7 flavors in a whiskey? Absolutely not. You may not find the same flavors, and that's okay. And so the reasons that I do these videos are twofold. One is so that I can share something that I'm passionate about with you guys. Me doing these videos for you allows you to partake in this hobby with me, or in other words, it allows me to drink socially. And the other reason is that maybe I can be a help to a fellow enthusiast, because I know when I was starting out, I looked to people who did reviews to give guidance to me. I don't trust, industry professionals. I trust people like myself, people who have interests like myself, people who have budgets like myself. And so maybe I can help somebody else along the way. And so that's the point of these. The only reason I go over all that is because most of you in WBSE know me, but we're growing every day, and some of you may not. So there's a little bit about me as it pertains to why I do these whiskey reviews. So on to the whiskey. The Balvenie 15-year single sherry cask. I really in-depthly talked about Balvenie as a distillery in the past, so I'm not going to rehash that all. A while back when I reviewed the Balvenie 12-year first fill bourbon cask, I really got into the distillery. I won't get into what makes the Balvenie such a unique distillery, what makes it one of my favorite distilleries. Suffice it to say, I'm a big fan of the way that they generally do things. They grow a lot of their own barley right on site in distillery-owned fields. They have their own coopers doing quality control on the casks that they use. They're innovative. They always put out a high-quality whiskey. Rarely do they add color or chill filter or age off-site. All their warehouses are right on site. Just a big fan of the way they do things in general. So whenever the Balvenie has new whiskey, if it's reasonably priced, I'm usually going to give it a try. And so, the Balvenie is one of many distilleries up in this Speyside region of the Scottish Highlands. This kind of sits on, that shelf on the northeast side facing back in towards the rest of Europe. And it's called Speyside because it's the region that is created by the boundary of the River Spey, which is one of the largest rivers in Scotland, but is really known as kind of a whiskey distillery haven. Popular distilleries like Glenlivet, Glenfiddich, Glenmorangie, countless others, Linkwood, Benriach, we can get into them, are all found in Speyside. The Balvenie is no exception. One thing you may not know is that the Balvenie is actually a sister distillery to Glenfiddich. They're both owned by the same parent company, William Grant and Sons. Okay, let's get into this actual whiskey. Balvenie 15-year single sherry cask. This is, like I said, it's drawn from a single cask aged at least 15 years. It is bottled at 47.8% alcohol by volume, a great strength, I think, to not be too light, but it's also not cask strength. It is non-chill filtered, and it tells you on here this was also drawn from a European oak sherry butt that previously held Spanish Oloroso sherry. I don't know if this whiskey was aged in a first fill butt or second fill. Judging by the color, 15 years in first fill, I would expect it actually to be a little bit darker. So I think this is aged in probably a second fill cask. I have seen other bottles that were much darker in color than mine. So there might be some first fill cask bottlings out there. They don't distinguish on the packaging or the bottle though. But we'll go ahead and jump in. We'll start with the nose. Up front, you notice fresh sherry fruits, things like grape, raisin, purple plums, more of a jammy fig note. Behind them, there's hints of a lighter citrus, cocoa, a bit of almond butter maybe. It's not too sweet, it's not too fresh, it's not too reduced. A lot of more longer aged sherry whiskeys will tend to pick up really reduced notes, almost like rancio notes. They'll get sticky and syrupy and jammy. Younger sherry aged whiskeys will stay on the side of fresher fruits. This is somewhere right in the middle, and it's quite lovely. There's also a little bit of honey in the background, which I'm happy to see. Honey is one of the Balvenie's really distinguishable house characteristics. Kind of a honey, vanilla, and floral or heather profile really distinguishes unadulterated Balvenie. But even though they spent 15 years in sherry, it still retains a little bit of that honey vanilla characteristic on the nose. There's a mild entry burn that recedes pretty quick, and the flavors start with a nice, clean barley malt and vanilla note, but pretty quickly that gets overran by more of those typical sherry notes, things like fig paste, strawberries, raisins. But then on the tail end, you actually get more of those house characteristics, honey, heather, maybe a little white chocolate even. This has a really nice tandem between sherry fruits and kind of typical Balvenie especially, but Speyside in general, characteristics of honey, vanilla, florals. Nothing overwhelms. The sherry doesn't overwhelm, but it definitely makes its presence known. The sherry fruits really are in the forefront, but they're not so dominating that this is what I would call by any means a sherry bomb. There's a lot more to be found here than just a few fruits reminiscent of sherry. And I really like that. Let's do another sip and we'll get the finish. On the finish, purple grapes, blueberries, blueberry skins, verging on tannic as it settles. Almost fresh grass, and back to more of a dry barley, walking through the fields type note. And it kind of lingers on that grass and barley note. Like I said, slightly tannic. Um, the remnants of the fruits is just that, just a remnant fading away, kind of leaving you with that grassiness. And it's a pretty long finish. It's still ever present in my mouth. Overall, this is a good whiskey. Let me go ahead and score it. Only got a couple more things to say about it, and we'll wrap up. $88 out of 100. In other words, a very excellent whiskey. It's not to that upper tier of, what I would call truly exceptional, transcendental whiskeys up in that 90 or above mark, but it's verging right on it. Why do I give it a score like this? My favorite thing about this whiskey is that it is anything but one-dimensional. I love big, high-proof sherry bomb just as much as the next guy, where you just get a barrage of red fruits and spices and things like that. I also love a nice, classic Highlander or Speyside that shows off the unadulterated characteristics of the malt, of the stills, of the region it was distilled in, where you get those honeys and those florals and those vanillas. Those are both great. But I love that this kind of takes the best of both of those and combines them together. There's no overwhelming sherry, but there are certainly sherry fruits. It's not typical ex-bourbon aged Balvenie, but you still get some of that in tandem with the sherry. Why it's not truly transcendental is because you don't get enough of each. And yeah, I'm splitting hairs. This is an excellent whiskey. That said, I have seen this whiskey vary tremendously in price, even from one store to another store 2 blocks away from it. I've seen this whiskey as low as $90. I've seen it most commonly around $110. I've seen it as high as $135. I would not feel comfortable buying this whiskey in that $130, $135 range. If that's kind of a typical whiskey for your budget, then sure, go for it. Because, like I said, I stand by the score. This is an excellent whiskey. But in that $90 to $110 range, I think this is a great pickup. I think it sits at the top of its class of peers. Other Scotches aged around the same amount of time in the same types of cask. I think this would perform very well next to them. But like I said, maybe pull the whiskey out of the tin at the store, see how dark it looks, because I have seen some darker than others, and maybe those are more sherry forward, but I really think that this is probably aged in a second fill sherry cask, and so it is not a sherry bomb, but it is a beautifully crafted whiskey, and I love it. One final note about Balvenie. One reason why I love that distillery, look at this marketing. If you can, it's marketing. It's what's supposed to draw you to this whiskey. This is some of the most informative marketing you'll ever see. There's no BS. There's no mythical names, or it's not filled with Gaelic writing. It's incredibly informative. It tells you all about the sherry butt. It has a blurb about what goes into creating the cask, toasting the cask, what the sherry does. This thing is just jam-packed with information, which for, kind of an information nut like me, I love it. Same thing with the bottle. I can't say enough just about the way the Balvenie conducts business, at least from a whiskey making standpoint. They're right up there with distilleries like Springbank, that I really think, just as far as Scottish distilleries go, they exemplify kind of my ideal distillery in the way that they choose to do things. So that's all I got. I hope you guys had a fantastic day, and I'll be back soon with more whiskey reviews. Cheers, guys.